Why has the FIA had to intervene in the middle of qualifying for the Japanese GP, changing the rules at the last minute? And why is all eyes pointing directly to McLaren? Are we seeing a simple technical correction, or the start of a silent war for energy control in Formula 1 2026? What happened at the Japanese GP was not an isolated event, nor a simple last-minute technical decision. It was the direct consequence of a problem that had been brewing since the beginning of the new 2026 era, where energy management has become the true battlefield between the teams. And at the center of all this, inevitably McLaren appears, not as a direct defender, but as one of the teams that has taken this concept to the absolute limit, forcing the FIA to react. To understand the magnitude of what happened, we must go directly to the key moment. The FIA decides to reduce the energy recharge limit from 9.0 mJ to 8.0 mJ exclusively for qualifying in Suzuka. This is not a minor change, it is not an unimportant adjustment, it is a direct intervention in how the cars operate at their most critical point of performance. And most importantly, this decision was not improvised, but was agreed upon with the unanimous support of all power unit manufacturers, making it clear that the problem was real, widespread, and potentially dangerous. This is where the concept that is completely changing Formula 1 comes in, the famous super clipping. A technique that arises from the need to manage a power unit where almost 50% of the performance depends on the electrical component. Cars no longer only compete for aerodynamics or thermal engines, they now compete for how they recharge and use energy lap by lap. And in that scenario, some teams, including McLaren, have explored extreme solutions that have taken the system to the limit. The problem is that super clipping is not only a strategic advantage, it is also an anomaly on the track. The cars begin to recover energy even when the driver is at full throttle, causing a sudden reduction in speed in areas where the opposite should occur. We are talking about losses of up to 30 km/h in fast corners or straight ends, a brutal difference that not only breaks competitive logic, but also introduces an obvious risk factor for the drivers behind. And this is where the narrative completely changes, because this stops being a performance issue and becomes a security problem. The FIA does not act because a team is too fast, it acts because the behavior of the cars begins to be unpredictable in conditions of maximum speed. And when that happens in Formula 1, intervention is not optional, it is mandatory. Within this context, the figure of Andrea Stella takes on key relevance. The McLaren boss not only recognizes the problem, but is shocked by what is happening on the track. Their statements reflect something deeper. Even the teams themselves are aware that they are pushing a technology that is not yet completely balanced. And when the protagonists of the system begin to question it, it is because the situation has reached a critical point. The most interesting thing about all this is that McLaren is not being pointed out directly as the culprit, but as one of the main protagonists of this change. Its ability to maximize charging and energy use has highlighted a gray area in the regulations, one that the FIA is now forced to control before the situation escalates. So what we saw in Japan was not a simple technical modification. It was the first big warning that Formula 1 2026 is entering completely new terrain, where innovation can be as dangerous as it is brilliant, and where each technological advance can trigger an immediate reaction from the regulatory body. And this opens up an inevitable question that changes everything. If the FIA has already had to intervene so soon, what else are the teams hiding in this energy war that has just begun? If the first blow was dealt by the FIA with this immediate adjustment in Japan, the real problem begins when we analyze what this reveals. Formula 1 has entered a completely unstable zone where not even the teams themselves are clear where the limit is. And this is where McLaren once again places itself at the center of the story, not by breaking a rule, but by demonstrating how far it can be stretched without anyone having completely defined it. Because what is happening with energy recharging is not simply another optimization. It is a structural change in how the performance of a Formula 1 is understood. For years, the key was in aerodynamics, in the balance of the car, in tire management, but now everything revolves around energy. When it is recovered, how much it is stored, and above all, how it is deployed. And in that game, McLaren has found a window that other teams have not known how or have not wanted to exploit with the same aggressiveness. Super clipping is not just a technique, it is practically a performance philosophy. Sacrifice speed at certain points to guarantee energy at others. The problem is that this sacrifice is neither progressive nor predictable. It's abrupt, it's violent, and that makes the car something completely different from what drivers expect when they are fighting wheel to wheel at more than 300 km/h. This is where the situation starts to get uncomfortable for everyone. Because if a car suddenly reduces its speed in an area where it should be accelerating at maximum speed, the driver behind has no room to react. It's not a question of talent, it's a physical question. And in a sport where everything is measured to the millimeter, introducing these types of variables completely breaks the competitive balance. But the most critical thing is not that. The most critical thing is that the alternative is not good either. The famous lift and coast, which should be the safest solution, also creates problems. It forces riders to take their foot off prematurely, disrupts active aerodynamics, and in many cases, ends up being even more detrimental to performance. That is to say, Formula One is caught between two imperfect options, where neither guarantees either total safety or pure competitiveness. And this is where Andrea Stella's words take on enormous weight. Because when McLaren's own boss recognizes that these decelerations can be dangerous, he is sending a direct message. This is not sustainable in the long term. It's not about winning a tenth more, it's about preventing the sport from entering a dynamic where cars stop behaving logically on the track. The interesting thing is that McLaren is not backing down. It is not slowing down its development. Quite the opposite. They are pushing for the regulation to evolve in the direction they consider most logical, increasing the MGUK recovery limit to make the system more stable and less aggressive in its effects. That is, they don't want to eliminate super clipping. They want to make it more efficient and less dangerous. This opens up a huge conflict, because if the FIA gives in, it would be indirectly validating McLaren's approach. But if you don't, you could be forcing all teams to operate in an environment that has already proven to be problematic. And in the midst of all this, the championship continues to move forward, with teams developing their cars in real time without clear certainty of where the regulations are heading. What we are seeing is not just a technical discussion. It is a fight to define the immediate future of Formula One. A battle where every decision can change the balance of power on the grid, and where McLaren has achieved something key, forcing the FIA to react before the season has even reached its critical point. And this is where everything ends up coming together. Because what happened in Japan is not the end of the problem, it is just the beginning of something much bigger. The intervention of the FIA has left a very clear signal within the paddock. The current regulations are not prepared to control the level of innovation that the teams have already achieved. And when that happens in Formula One, the next thing is always an escalation. McLaren has shown that you don't need to break the rules to change the game. You just need to understand them better than anyone else. They have taken energy management to a point where it is no longer just a tool, it is the backbone of performance. And in doing so, they have exposed a structural weakness in the regulations that the FIA is now trying to correct on the fly. But the problem is that when you react, you are already late. Because while the FIA adjusts limits, the teams continue to develop. While there is debate over whether 8.0 MJ is the correct number, engineers are already working on how to optimize every thousandth within that new range. And in that scenario, those who were one step ahead like McLaren do not lose their advantage, they simply adapt faster than the rest. Which leaves a disturbing conclusion. This investigation or intervention does not stop McLaren. It indirectly validates that they were exploring the right path. And that's what's really worrying. Because if one team has found a more efficient way to manage energy, everyone else is going to try to copy it. And when that happens, the problem we saw in Japan will not be specific. It will be constant throughout the grid. This is where Formula One enters a critical crossroads. If the FIA tightens the rules, it may curb innovation and completely change the competitive balance. But if this is allowed to evolve unchecked, the car's behavior could become increasingly unpredictable, directly affecting the spectacle and safety. And in the midst of all this, the figure of Andrea Stella is marked by a mixture of surprise and concern. Because what he has seen on the track is not only a technical advantage, it is a warning. A sign that the limit is no longer clear, that cars are starting to behave in ways that not even the teams themselves can fully anticipate. The most shocking thing about this story is that there is no clear villain. McLaren has not cheated. The FIA has not made a mistake. The teams are not acting irresponsibly. All this is the natural result of a Formula One that constantly pushes towards the limit of the possible. But this time, that boundary seems to have been blurred. And that leaves us with one last reflection that changes everything. If in just a few races we have already seen the FIA intervene in this way, what is going to happen when the teams fully understand this new system and take it even further? Because if the Japanese GP has made anything clear, it is that the real war of Formula One 2026 is not on the track, it is in the energy. What we have seen in the Japanese GP is not a simple technical controversy, nor another curiosity within the development of single-seaters. It is a clear sign of where Formula One is heading. A category where it is no longer just the fastest car that wins, but the team that best understands an increasingly complex, more sensitive and more difficult to control system. McLaren has achieved something that very few achieve in this sport, forcing the FIA to react. Not by breaking the rules, but by taking them to a point where they are no longer enough. And therein lies the key to everything. We are not talking about illegality, we are talking about advanced evolution. From a team that has interpreted the new DNA of Formula 1 2026 better than anyone. But that evolution has a price. Because when performance begins to generate unpredictable behavior, when speed is no longer constant at the most critical points of the circuit, the sport enters a dangerous zone. And that is where the FIA is forced to intervene, not to stop a team, but to protect the balance between innovation, competition, and safety. The great reality is that this is not over. Quite the opposite. What happened in Japan is only the first chapter of a battle that will grow race after race. The teams are going to continue pushing, the FIA is going to continue adjusting, and in the midst of that push and pull, it will be defined who dominates this new era. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.